Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by Aaron Stokes, who's made it back from his adventures in Europe, looking a little bit worse for wear. You might be expecting the usual view from the opposition, but it's not coming to you this week because my go-to Crystal Palace podcaster is unavailable, and I've had no luck getting another guest as a replacement. So we thought we'd get Aaron back on, not to talk about his holiday, but to talk about Newcastle United, to talk about the visit of Crystal Palace, which was going to be our main topic of today. But as we've just come in, breaking news, ladies and gents, all about Newcastle United's training ground and the fact that the club have submitted plans to extend it, while also still searching for a new site for their HQ. So, Aaron, over to you. What has happened? What have the club done? And what does the future hold for Newcastle United's training ground?
Yeah, as just mentioned, plans have been submitted for an extension of the club's training ground. If the work gets approved by the necessary parties, then they're expecting it to be done by the summer of 2026. Some images have been released by the club, which show sort of a new state-of-the-art building added onto the current training ground. And the plan and vision for that has been submitted. 1,350 square metres of a new accommodation with new offices, meeting spaces, and additional support facilities.
I've put the image up there on the screen so you can see where the new building is, to the left of the current site. New build accommodation. Now, we see the word accommodation. Does that mean there's going to be facilities there for people to stop over?
Yeah, it looks like it. We know that a lot of Premier League clubs have sort of done that now. Leicester, for example, have got a huge hotel on site. Bournemouth have just unveiled their new state-of-the-art training ground in the last couple of weeks, and that's got a similar thing. I think it is now sort of becoming the norm for Premier League clubs to have these sort of accommodations on site. We know that Newcastle's current setup, which has already been improved under this ownership, we saw a lot of money pumped in when they first took over, but Newcastle's current facilities don't have that. And I think this is just another sign of Newcastle's owners trying to drag the club sort of further into the future with these type of investments.
Are you ready for me to use my most favourite word of all time?
Oh, it's been a while.
It has. It is refreshing to see the club putting investment into their current site while also searching for a new site, because a lot of clubs wouldn't bother. They just kind of say, right, we've got enough to get on. We'll limp on through until we find wherever we're going to call the training ground home in the not too distant future. But instead, what they're doing is they're doing it at the same time, which is really, really important, because the players have to have this top class facility to train, to get better, to work during the week until they find an even better one where they'll do that for the next generation.
Yeah, it's just about not about standing still, isn't it? And that's what Newcastle are showing here. In the last 2 or 3 years, they've already vastly improved the dining area at Newcastle. They've put a lot more offices in. They have put hydrotherapy pools in, spas, put a lot of time and focus into the recovery side of the training aspect.
There's a pool in there
There's
now.
a pool in there, yeah, hydrotherapy sort of spots for the players. They've also, even just little things like putting that tech ball table in for the likes of Joelinton, just to sort of improve the mood around the place. And now, as we say, they're going to, take it a step further. So it's good to see that they're not resting on their laurels and they want to keep pushing forward.
I'm going to go on the council website and just delve a little bit deeper into the plans, because I'm sure that it might be all about paddle now. That's the new thing, isn't it?
I hope so. Get me there.
That's what he was doing, ladies and gents, in Prague. He was playing paddle on a stag do. I mean, not what I thought he'd be doing, but that's what he did do. Did you win?
I did, yeah, I did.
A lot of people have said, why aren't they moving quicker? I saw one tweet this morning saying Bournemouth owner came in and didn't take very long at all to turn things around there and get them a new facility, which just isn't true. I did dive into what happened at Bournemouth. The first plan was approved in 2019. They bought the site, which was an old golf course, in the January 2018. It was then postponed kind of because of COVID and relegation as well. Work then restarted in 2022, and it's just opened this month. £32 million in total. The golf course cost them $3.75 million. But what that proves is it doesn't happen overnight, does it? It takes time, because you've got to find the site and then you've got to put the plans through to create this brilliant facility. So it's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, I don't think we're not in any rush. As I've just said a minute ago, it's not as if Newcastle United are still using this old training ground that they had under Mike Ashley, or even the one that they've built in recent years. They're still striving to push forward while they look for this new site. And I don't think anyone really should be, one of them to rush that. We know they've taken their time. They've been through a lot of different potential facilities. We know they looked at the airport. They couldn't get that done. They've looked maybe a little bit closer at the city centre as well with Gosforth. The racecourse has been talked about. It's not a decision that can be, made overnight. There's a lot of moving parts to it. And yeah, I think anybody sort of tweeting or posting that, they need to be getting on with it. And it needs to just sort of, I don't know, enjoy what they're doing rather than, asking for more.
Yeah, and I go back to that point I made. It's encouraging to see them still investing in the current site while trying to find a new site. I want to go back to a quote that Lee Charnley, obviously former managing director under Mike Ashley, once said. He said, "No player has turned around and said they will not sign because of the training ground." Do you think that was a fair quote? And does that ring true? Or does the facilities really matter?
No, I don't think that rung true at the time, and I don't think it is now. And yes, there might be a lot of other factors involved in a player's move, like the location of the team and the wages and whatever. But if Newcastle United, under Lee Charnley and Mike Ashley's ownership, had the choice of going and playing there at Benton, where, let's be honest, the facilities weren't great and the players were in paddling pools and wheelie bins, or they go down the road and they see Leicester, who have just spent hundreds of £1 million on a, really top-class facility for players, of course it's going to have an impact. Now, look, Newcastle United have now, as opposed to then, obviously has a lot more to offer than just the training ground. It's the direction of the club, it's the players that you'd be playing with, whatever. But that will definitely make a difference to the players. Bear in mind they're going to be there 5 times a week.
Because what the players see matters. Obviously, you mentioned their Champions League and signing big name players. That is brilliant. That will probably take the most of the focus for any new arrival, but also they will want to train in a top class facility. They will look endlessly at Leicester or Bournemouth and think, "Oh my goodness, look at that compared to what we are training in." But the good thing is that the current owners at Newcastle United have massively improved what was on offer 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, and I just go back to recent signings Newcastle have made, and we all remember the video of Sandro Tonali and his wife going around the training ground and it being recorded, and the wife was sort of taken aback. Sorry, his then girlfriend, now fiance, was taken aback by sort of how big the gym was. I remember when Dan Ashworth was going through a presentation with Anthony Gordon in this huge new dining area. That will make a difference to players when they're going into that environment and it feels, warm, inviting. They can tell that money's been spent on it. So definitely, it will make a huge difference going forward.
You think the players will be encouraged that they're seeing this investment into this site while also searching for a new one?
Yeah, definitely. And I think just it speaks to a wider point, doesn't it? And it's something that we've just been talking about off air. It's another sign of PIF investment. It's another sign of the ownership saying, right, we're not content with Newcastle United just challenging for the top 4. We want these players to, challenge for the title. And to do that, you need the best of the best. And yes, it might take a bit of time, but the players will definitely be looking at this as a positive sign.
Yep, indeed. And you can read the full statement over on our website. But as Aaron said there, planning permission submitted for a site measuring 1,350 square meters of necessary new build accommodation, which will be focused on a new office and meeting space and additional support facilities. So we will wait and see if that is approved by the council. We're going to also talk now about some transfer news, Aaron. We're waiting for this to be officially confirmed by the club, but it does look like this one's going to happen. And this is an 18-year-old winger from Malaga, Antonio Cordero, played 51 times for Malaga's first team, scoring 6 goals, which is huge numbers for such a young man. It looks like Newcastle have beaten quite a few brilliant teams to this young man's signature.
Yeah, the news sort of started to emerge this morning on Tuesday morning, an hour or so before Jason Tindall took his seat at Benton. I believe it was George Corkin of The Athletic that put the question to Jason Tindall this morning, and Tindall doing his best Eddie Howe impression. He's clearly been advised on what to say, and he sort of gave a very sort of vague answer about, the club are scouring Europe. They're always looking to find these sort of top talent, but he wouldn't really go any further. As you mentioned, some really, really big clubs beaten to this signature. We've seen a lot of speculation around Cordero in the last couple of months, and every time Newcastle have been mentioned, they've been mentioned in the same breath as Real Madrid and Barcelona and Arsenal. And for Newcastle to potentially go over to Spain to a club like Malaga and beat those 2 Spanish clubs that I've just mentioned to a young talent would really, really speak volumes.
Yeah, it's going to be a very exciting signing. And whether he comes straight into the first team or whether he maybe goes out on loans or maybe spends some time in the under-21s, we'll wait and see what happens there. But you would think with a man with those numbers, Aaron, he'd have to at least go out on loan for first time experience, wouldn't
Yeah, look, potentially. I think if the signing gets completed, it probably falls into the same category as the likes of Pivas, who we know has gone out on loan to the Eredivisie this season, or Vakhtang Salia, who again probably playing at a similar level for Dynamo Tbilisi. He's going to come in the summer. We don't know what he'll do with him. It could also be a case that he plays in that under-21 team, which is getting much better as we've seen in recent weeks. And then gets thrown into first team training like we've seen with Shahar and Sean Neve and players like that. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens with him. As you say, he's played a lot of football in the second division in Spain, despite the fact he's 18 years old. So there's clearly a really good, consistent talent there. So it'll be exciting to see what happens when he arrives.
Does this further confirm the approach of Paul Mitchell when it comes to signings at Newcastle United?
Yeah, look, it might not be popular, but I always talk about the fact that it was actually Dan Ashworth who started this revolution. He made it clear that Newcastle need to be signing for the future, and the sort of mantle's been picked up and carried on by Paul Mitchell, as I've just mentioned there. A couple of really good, exciting talents have been signed from abroad. You've also got the ones close at home, like Sanusi Shahar signed from clubs in the Midlands, Alfie Harrison from Man City. And you look at that under-21 side now, and it's really, really full of some top talent who potentially, if things fall right, could, save the club, a small fortune in the future.
And I guess the hope of signing such talented youngsters, not only the hope will be getting them into the first team and saving a pretty penny, because you don't have to go out and buy established names, which will cost you the best part of 60, 70, 80 million pounds. But in the short term, the hope will be that actually, because you're raising the level within the under-21s, is that will just push people to that next level. Instead of having one or two standout potential first team players, you've actually got 5, 6, 7, or 8.
Yeah, you could probably mention more. I mean, you'd look at the sort of under-18 to under-21 level now at Newcastle, and even they're signing 14 and 15-year-olds from, clubs like Port Vale and Southend and Oldham in the last couple of seasons, and the standard of every group is getting better. Now, look, not all those players are going to come and, play on the first team. It's going to be very hard for them to make that jump. But what it's going to do is it's going to raise the level of the players around them, isn't it? And now you've got teams like the under-21s fighting. They're in the playoffs at the minute of the Premier League too. They've had a really good end of the season. And as I say, it's just raising the entire standard of the youth setup.
What does it say that we believe Newcastle have beaten Real Madrid and Barcelona to this young man's signature?
Yeah, look, it's huge because, when you sign in a player like this who, as I've mentioned, he's played for Sevilla, he's played for Real Betis, he's played for Cadiz in his youth career. He obviously made his name at Malaga. But he's spent his entire career in Spain. He is a Spanish international at youth level. To say no to those two clubs who are absolute giants in their own right is huge. And a couple of years ago, Newcastle United wouldn't have even been in this race. So look, if they can get the deal over the line, it's absolutely huge. It can't be understated. And I think what it does prove is that Newcastle can now offer a pathway for these players. They're saying, look, we're fighting for Champions League football. You can be a part of this. You can come and play Premier League football, which is obviously going to be a huge sell for players. And they've also got the staff in place to do it, not only to find these players, the likes of Steve Nixon, who's got a fantastic track record of late, but also the people like Paul Mitchell who can go in, they're really experienced, and they can say, look, this is what we want to offer you, and they can get the job done.
Yeah, I would love to know the sales pitch.
Yeah.
Because you would automatically assume for a man in Spain, when Real Madrid or Barcelona pick up the phone and say, we want you, it would be a battle between those two clubs. I want to know what's been said.
Maybe he's gone over and said, look, we're extending the training ground, and and this is why you should come sign.
Yeah, Lee Charnley. On to Palace versus Newcastle United. Then obviously Palace up here at St James's Park on Wednesday. The game in hand, Newcastle win that, they will go above Forest, and then a potential to go 8 points clear of Villa should they beat Villa on Saturday. So it's a huge couple of games coming up for Newcastle United. We'll start though with the news on Eddie Howe. Confirmed yesterday that he'd been suffering from pneumonia, and he won't be back in the dugout for Palace or Villa, and maybe even longer, Aaron. So what was said this morning with Jason Tyndall carrying out the press conference?
Yeah, as you can imagine, that was the first and most pressing question put to him. And, the message was essentially, look, he's going to miss the next two games, but we are not sort of putting a time limit on when he's going to be off. He could be later. It could be. It's just basically until he feels ready to come back. On it, Jason said, and specifically asked about how it feels to not have to not have Howe by his side after so long of working together. He said, of course, it's really difficult, especially with someone that you've worked so closely with for such a long time. And as I said, he's never missed more than 1 or 2 days in the whole time that we've been working together. It's a new situation for me. It's a new situation for the players and the staff. But the most important thing, and I think the thing that almost gives you comfort, is that he's in the best hands possible. He's not a silly guy, and he will take notice of what's been said to him in hospital, and he makes sure that he is fully recovered when he comes back. And the sooner he's back, the better for everybody.
Do we think there's a risk that he might miss the remainder of the season?
Look, we haven't really been privy as to how serious it is, but look, we know pneumonia is nothing to be sort of
Played down. It's a very serious illness.
100%. And I think it to steal a phrase from you, I think it was quite refreshing to hear Tyndall say that this morning about the fact that Eddie will take the time to recover, because we know what he's like. He's a workaholic, and there will be a huge part of him that just wants to get back and will want this to just be a 2-3 game absence and then he's back. But look, it's a serious condition, and hopefully he just takes the time that he needs to get better.
Well, not to make light of the situation, but he's fortunate that the 3 games he's missing so far are all going to be on TV.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or through our live blog as well, Eddie. But we wish you well, and obviously speedy recovery, but hopefully he's not out of the dugout for too long. Obviously, Newcastle beat Manchester United. Beautiful performance, brilliant result. It was easy, really. I mean, Man United was shocking, but Newcastle still had a job to do, and we were a little bit worried about the impact it would have with Howe missing it. But it seems like Tyndall and Graham Jones and the rest of the staff are very capable of getting the message across. Are you sharing that confidence again for Wednesday?
Weirdly, I think I was, and this feels crazy to say as of just a couple of years ago, but I actually feel a lot more trepidation around Palace than I do against Manchester United, because Manchester United are just, sliding down the table, and Palace look like a real force. Oliver Glasner's got them playing some fantastic football. They've had a very good run of late before a defeat on Saturday. So I was a lot more confident going into Sunday than I was going into Wednesday. But equally, I'm confident that Tyndall and his staff can get the job done as well.
Well, Tyndall said about Palace, they've been in fantastic form. They don't concede many goals, so it's going to be a really difficult challenge for us. He said, I was really proud with the win on Sunday. It's a testament to the group of players we have and the staff. They showed a fantastic attitude and pulled together when they really needed to. We've got Joe Willock possibly back as well. Jason Tyndall added that the squad is in good shape and Willock will be available again. And there's no new injury concerns. Obviously, Gordon came off the bench, Aaron, and got a few minutes under his belt as well. You would assume that it would be unchanged. I did say in the match preview that actually I could see Emil Kraft coming in for Kieran Trippier, saving his legs for Saturday. I think as much as we fear Palace is the bigger test than Man United, Villa is the bigger test than Palace. So it's about maybe getting that balance right.
Yeah, I suspect it will probably be unchanged. I do get your sort of point of view about Trippier and resting, but I think the way the team are playing at the minute, I think Tyndall will want to be keeping it the same. He essentially said on Saturday after the game, when asked about his selection and predominantly about Barnes versus Gordon, he sort of came out and said the team picks itself at the minute, which I agree with. And I think after such a performance on Sunday, you would want it to say the same.
Would you like some stats?
Please, as always.
Newcastle have selected the same starting 11 in the last 5 games, all of which they have won. So there you go.
Very good.
As you said, probably the same on Wednesday. They have lost just 1 of the last 12 midweek home league fixtures, won 8 and drawing 3. And this is the stat. If you're fearing Crystal Palace, and I understand why you might be a little bit, because they have lost just 4 in the last 20 and had gone 10 without defeat on the road before that visit to the Etihad. But they've only won 1 of the last 7 games in the league against Newcastle United, drawing 4 and losing 2. So there's a little bit of hope, right?
Yeah, there you go. You've put my mind at ease as I read that. They beat Leicester away, Palace away, Man United away, Fulham away, and that's it in the last couple of months.
This is their first real tough fixture. I mean, City, who's City? They have scored 15 goals from set pieces, though, excluding penalties, the most in the Premier League. So that shows you where their biggest threat will be.
Yeah, absolutely. they're a fantastic team and got some fantastic players. It's a really interesting stat that about the set pieces that I saw over the weekend, because everyone would have you think it was Arsenal who were the set piece wizards. But no, yeah, Palace are great. They've got fantastic players. I really, really like Mateta. I think he's going to be a real handful for Sharon Byrne if it's them that play at centre back. Eze is obviously Eze. And Sarr as well, is Miller Sarr playing well. So they've got some really, really talented players. But as I say, I think Newcastle get a job done.
I think Newcastle deal all right with the set pieces. Dan Burn, very good in the air over recent games. I mean, he was fantastic. He won 9 out of 9 aerial duels against Manchester United. I think what's also really important is that earlier on in the season, they were switching off at corners. They were letting men run. They weren't following the players that were meant to be tracking. But that seemingly has gone a little bit out the window, which is a fantastic positive. And they're going to need to be at their best to stop Palace and their set piece strength. We saw against Manchester City that if you don't press Palace, they will hurt you because they've got that front three, as you mentioned, Eze, Mateta, Sarr. Then you've got the overlapping full-backs of Munoz, and I think, is it Mitchell on the left-hand side? But then we also saw in the second half that actually if you do press and you bring that high intensity against Palace, they really struggle to break through it. So that's what Newcastle United have got to do. We saw against Manchester United to a certain degree, but it was a little bit set off because they knew to allow Manchester United to play it out a little bit, and then that's when you kind of jump on them. Can Newcastle United bring the high pressure and that same intensity to Wednesday?
Yeah, I think they can, and I think look, being at home and playing under that crowd, under the lights, will make it easier for the players to press because, you know, we often see them do it in these type of games. I actually think they probably did it more against Manchester United than you maybe have sort of alluded to there. And I think it was really interesting that Jason Tindall said after the game that at half-time he wanted to make some sort of subtle tactical changes because he didn't feel like the press was right. We saw Harvey Barnes change a little bit. Joel moved a little bit further forward. So yeah, I'm not expecting them to sit off Palace on Wednesday. And I think we saw it work on Sunday as well.
Yeah, an early goal going to be key here.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the other day, and what a goal it was, by the way, by Sandro Tonali. I think if you can get Palace on the back foot early, as I say, under the lights at St James's, it's tricky for them to get back into it.
It's going to be another interesting afternoon for the full-backs. If it is indeed Kieran Trippier and Tino Livramento on the left, I mean, Livramento has just gone from strength to strength at left back, but he's going to have to take on Sarr, who is not someone to be, underestimated. He's a talented player.
Yeah, he is. He's been in fantastic form in the second half of the season. I was really, really impressed with Tino on Sunday. Going forward, I think he's been absolutely brilliant since that West Ham game. Since the final after that West Ham game. He looks so full of confidence with the ball at his feet. But equally, I think we've seen him do well defensively without it. Salah was obviously the key one that sticks out in your mind from the last couple of weeks. But I think as a whole, he's really, really taken at that left back role in recent weeks.
But I think the fact that Palace they don't like too much possession. I think they had 31% possession overall against Man City in the territory game, and it was quite. It was not as much as I was expecting actually in the first half, having looked at it, because they'd obviously dominated. But I think the fact that their fullbacks like to overlap and get down, if Tino Livramento can get the ball and then hit Palace on the counter, that's where he's so good at. We've seen it in recent weeks. You've just mentioned it there. He's brilliant going forward. So I think that might be part of the game plan, that if Palace do get the ball and they manage to move up the pitch, stop them, allow the fullbacks on the overlap, and that's where you go forward.
And we've seen Munoz and Mitchell absolutely love to get forward. I mean, Munoz in the reverse fixture found himself so far up the pitch on a counter-attack, it was absolutely ridiculous. So, I think you're absolutely right with that, and we're spot on with that sort of assessment of it.
You can get them into, you can lure them in a little bit, caught into a little bit of a trap, and make them feel like they can come forward and attack it. But as long as you stop them, and then the speed Newcastle have got, Tonali with the engine, Barnes is one of the top carriers with the ball this season. I think Newcastle have got a really good opportunity to exploit the space that will be left when Mitchell and Munoz inevitably do come forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Palace, having had such a good second half of the season and actually putting 2 past City early the other day, will have the confidence to want to maybe go for it, which could also play Newcastle's in their hands.
Any hope of a distraction when it comes to the semi-final of the FA Cup? Is it too soon to talk about that?
Potentially, yeah, maybe, but I think maybe too soon for that, actually. Yeah. I'm not too sure that'll be on their mind.
It's a few weeks away yet. Obviously, Newcastle drew 1-1 at Selhurst Park earlier in the season. Mark Gee with an own goal. He'll be back on Wednesday. I mean, we talk a lot about him because Newcastle tried to sign him in the summer. We talk a lot sometimes about players having auditions. Is this another audition for Mark Gee? Do you think Newcastle's interest has moved on?
Look, I mean, yeah, a lot gets made of these auditions, and I think it will ultimately give Newcastle United staff and sort of the transfer chiefs in the stadium to get a close look, but they'll already know what he's about. They pursued him for so long last season, and obviously made such a play from last summer. I don't think we'll maybe be able to tell us anything new. I've said on this pod before, I wouldn't be surprised if the interest has maybe moved on from Gay to maybe a little bit of a cheaper alternative, but certainly it'll be interesting to see. To see
him back and to see why Newcastle like him so much.
And I think Palace missed him on Saturday when he was suspended.
Yeah, I think certainly did. Chelsea, Liverpool also interested in getting him in the summer. Just talk to us about how important this game is then in terms of Newcastle's Champions League aspirations.
Huge, absolutely huge. Our colleague Kieran Kelly put a question to Tyndall this morning about Newcastle being the hunters rather than being hunted. And I think the sort of sentiment around Newcastle at the minute has changed, and that's that we should be looking towards Forest and Arsenal, not looking over our shoulder at City and Villa and Chelsea and all these clubs. So it's huge for the momentum if they can win. They're on such a good run. They've played so well since the cup final. They won't want that to slip. And obviously what it would mean for sort of the league table and the Champions League push doesn't need to be stated.
Indeed. I'm going to do the trivia this week. I've got it in front of me. But first off, just want to point out something with Aaron's shoulder. So let me zoom in here on the good old webcam. Sorry, it's a very temperamental webcam. But you can see just over Aaron's shoulder there is a wonderful glass boot on our shelf there. New addition to the studio. Oh God, this is a good zoom in on this camera. And it is a replica Alan Shearer boot. It's done by an artist called Andrew Collins, who's kindly donated this to our studio for a couple of months. It's a brilliant bit of artwork, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really, really good. Yeah, little Umbro classic. Shearer used to like an Umbro.
Signed by the big man himself. That is Alan Shearer, not Andrew Collins, but it is signed by Alan Shearer himself. So that is a nice addition to our studio. And we've got a lovely bit of artwork all over the shop here, haven't we?
Yeah.
So thank you to everyone who's suggested where we should go out and buy pictures of whether it be Kevin Keegan or St James's Park, and we'll add a few more as time goes on. Right, are you ready for the trivia?
Yeah.
So players who've played for Newcastle United and Crystal Palace in the top flight. There's only 5 here. I thought it'd be more than this. I've got 5 names anyway, according to fbref.com. Doesn't say when it was last updated. It does say actually there were 14 players who played for both Newcastle and Crystal Palace, but this is the top 5 ranked by matches played. It's a little bit different to what you usually do.
All right, okay. So in terms of matches played for both?
Yes.
Right, okay. Right, we'll start with Johan Kabay.
Yeah, played 3 seasons for Newcastle United and 3 seasons for Crystal Palace. Actually played more games for Palace than he did Newcastle.
That's interesting. That you wouldn't
109 to 88.
I will go with Andros Townsend.
Yeah, played only 1 season, of course, Newcastle. 13 matches played 5 for Palace. 185.
Okay. We will go for. Am I making this up, or did Shola play for Palace?
1 season.
Yeah,
and he ranks top in this simply because he played 348 games for Newcastle United and he played 4 for Crystal Palace. But he's top of that list.
I didn't know if I just made it up. I could picture him I can picture him in the exact kit.
So you've got 2 more to go.
Right.
And both of these players played more than 100 times for Palace.
Right. So they're more sort of Palace focused than Newcastle. I'm drawing a blank after those 3, I'll be honest. So I might need a little
one was a fullback for Sunderland and Chelsea.
Yeah, Patrick Van Aanholt.
So he played 7 games for Newcastle, 134 for Palace.
Yeah,
and the other man was a winger who played in the Championship under Chris Hughton, very speedy. I would say he's one of the most well-known Palace players, I think, of the generation when we grew up watching the Premier League and Championship.
Winger in the Championship.
He played for Swansea as well, I'm going to say.
Wayne Routledge.
There we go. 2 seasons for Newcastle United, 34 matches played, 110 for Palace. So there you go. It's a little bit different,
that was
isn't
a nice change.
Because you've got to think about it as well, haven't you? You know, of course, Shola tops that because he played so many times for Newcastle United. Well, ladies and gents, it's been a bit of a different view from the opposition. It hasn't been a view from the opposition at all, but I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Please do give a thumbs up and a subscribe on the YouTube channel. Please leave us a rating and review on the audio channel. Remember to click the link in your podcast description box for your NordVPN subscription. Aaron, I'm sure, used his while in Prague to keep his details lovely and safe. And remember, subscription starts from just £2.30 per month and can be used over 10 devices. It is well worth the money you pay, and you're supporting the podcast at the same time. For myself and Aaron, we will be back next week for actually be the Tuesday show it'll be a Monday show on the Tuesday because it's good old Easter Monday, right?
Yeah, it will be.
Hopefully celebrating all 3 points against Aston Villa.
Certainly celebrating all 3 points.
Will it be maximum points over Palace and Villa?
Yeah, why not?
Say it a little bit louder.
Yeah, go on.
With some conviction. There we go, ladies and gents. You can write into him if he's wrong. Enjoy the rest of the week, and here's to victory over Palace and Aston Villa.